I wonder if I can get Max to do a version of this intro with sleigh bells. Hold on. Ah, he's busy. It's Christmas. God damn it.
Hello, friends. Christmas is upon us once more, as you can tell. And you know what that means? Spending time with the people you love? By which I mean, there's a Steam sale on. So to celebrate the great games of 2016, give a couple of recommendations for stuff you might as well get while it's on sale, and figure out what my personal game of the year is, I thought I'd give my top 11 games of 2016. Why 11? Because oh, by the way, some games will be games that didn't necessarily come out in 2016, but which I happened to play for the first time this year. Some games aren't even out yet, thanks to the magic of Steam Early Access. I didn't plan this list out very well. Oops.
Number 11, No Man's Sky.
That's right, this year I did the most dangerous thing you can do on the internet. I liked a game more than the people who make angry rants about them for attention.
I don't watch trailers or read press releases or pay attention to the endless speculation about future games that might be so good they eradicate the inherent ennui of being mortal. So my hopes were never raised. I didn't need No Man's Sky to be anything, so my expectations couldn't be betrayed. I let the game be what it was, and what it was big and empty and beautiful and lonely and impersonal. It was like reading The Road, only marginally less depressing and far better written. Look, sorry Cormac, it's really not your best, the movie was better. I wouldn't recommend this to everyone, but I really liked it and you can't stop me. They're updating it to slowly add stuff I didn't think it needed all that much and make it more like the game everyone else wanted it to be. So when it finishes up doing all that in the minimum 2 years required to make it into that game, I'm sure everyone else will finally check it out for 5 minutes and go, I guess it's pretty good, and then turn it off and go back to playing Star Citizen, which I'm sure will be out by then. But the stripped down experience of a loose, almost aimless journey through the vast yet mundane reaches of space got me in a really big way. I can't say I like the changes that are being made, and I especially can't say I like the idea that the team were actually going for the game they're making it into, because that means they completely fucked up. But it would be wrong of me to deny the fun I had idly toiling in the universe of No Man's Sky. Number 10, Brigador. Brigador, formerly known as Matador according to Wikipedia, went into early access in 2015 and I played it a tiny bit back then, but when it came out fully this year I went back to it and had a great time. It's an isometric game in which you control a mech, tank or flying car through a highly destructible world and take out enemy vehicles and buildings. There's a great mix of stealth, reflexive action and tactics going on all at once in a great way, and I just love the aesthetic. It reminds me of a high-res version of early 90s PC games like Fallout, complete with more advanced lighting effects. The music is also absolutely fantastic. There are some genuine bangers by Makeup and Vanity Set, but every time I try to listen to them on their own, I have to stop and just go play the game. It's relentlessly hard at times, and some of the vehicles seem ridiculously difficult on purpose, but it's a lot of fun and quick enough that dying on an attempt doesn't feel like you wasted a lot of time. I really love the sense of scope the game brings to the action. You're usually going after specific targets like an orbital relay or a few specific enemy machines, but you can basically walk through buildings and almost everything else, including people, and generally wreak a lot of havoc. There's this great sense of purpose when buildings are going off all around you in chain reaction explosions from gunfire and civilians are running away in their little yellow coats, tiny victims of a greater battle that are completely ignored as you and the occupation duke it out for their ultimate fate. These little touches add a lot of feeling to play, and it makes Brigador good enough that I put it in my top 11 list even though I played it technically last year. I'm really bad at this! Number 9, Hitman. The Hitman games are mostly shite. Each successive game feels like an unfinished beta for the next one. The technology is never quite good enough to encapsulate the vision of a world where you hit mans for money and have the freedom to do it lots of ways. Hitman 1 is barely playable garbage fire. Hitman 2 is technically a functional piece of software, but it's critically unfun to play the intended way and so on, culminating in Blood Money, an actually pretty decent game with some fun stuff, but which really doesn't hold up in retrospect. And then there's its sequel, Hitman Absolution, a very average Hitman game that crashed a third of the way through and deleted all my saves, and I had no interest in replaying any of the levels to get back to where I was, which for a Hitman game is a really bad sign. My expectations for this game were incredibly low. But actually playing it, it's really fun and cool. It's less a case of the technology finally catching up with the vision, and more the vision itself changing and advancing, as evidenced by the episodic setup and dramatically increased scope of the levels and the options available to you. The opportunity system is annoying because it spells out solutions to you, and the AI sometimes seems all too prepared to feed the solution to you no matter what.
Hey, this hitman guy, that looks like he could disguise himself as this guy and go wherever he wanted in the build. Oh, fuck you. You think it's so easy to be a fucking hitman, you piece of shit? Oh, look, a masseuse in a relatively unguarded area is gonna have a private massage with the guy we have to kill.
Why it even has a thing to tell you, like, it gives instructions, gives you a map to where he is. Oh, you've got an interview with the guy I've got to kill, do you? That's a nice thing to just keep saying out loud on repeat until I hear it. If you think it's a fucking smart way, you do the assassination. Here's my gun, here's my proximity device, you do the fucking assassination if you think it's a fucking smart, you fucking piece of shit. But you can turn that system off, and overall the game is good enough at presenting you with an intuitive but challenging situation and letting you solve it yourself without much trial or error.
What's going on?
It's the game Hitman was always supposed to have been, and it's nice, it finally validates all the really bad ones I played through.
Nothing there.
Who would have thought it?
Number 8, Superhot. For those of you who haven't heard of Super Hot. It's a game about a game where you play someone trying to pirate the game Superhot, and occasionally play betas, which involve simple but stylish first-person action puzzles where time only moves when you move. It's ridiculously pretty, and it manages to make a frenetic shooter that you can slow down at any time still feel challenging. Superhot is very short, but I've replayed it about 8 times because I like time-warping murder so much. I can't wait to eventually somehow own all the exceedingly expensive equipment required to play the Oculus Touch VR version, which looks amazing, frankly, and like the first game that might actually justify getting a VR setup like that. Unfortunately, Santa Claus isn't real. I'm sorry, kids. It's your parents. Number 7, Darkest Dungeon. Double D is so good I made an entire video about the feelings it gave me as I played it. It's a very good RPG with people and home base managing sections evocative of XCOM, which is great, but what makes it even more awesome is the feeling that the world's infectious evil is slowly turning you into a monster too. It's a type of game I will, in all likelihood, rip off at some point in the future in my own games. It encourages a much more dehumanizing approach than XCOM, where you recognize that these people are frail and expendable and slowly become less and less attached to the dozens of people that move through your ranks. In XCOM, you eventually start wanting to painstakingly save and reload to preserve the high-level trooper you named after one of your friends who you've been on so many adventures with at that point. In Darkest Dungeon, you've named 8 people after that friend, and the latest one is definitely doomed too and already has a drinking problem. Number 6, Factorio. I bought this game around midnight one day and played it for a bit. It seemed pretty good. I looked out my window and it was getting light. Then I played it a bit longer and looked out my window again and it was dark. I assumed I'd just been wrong about it getting light, like my eyes had been deceiving me because I'd been looking at a screen for so long. Then I checked the time on my phone and it was 7 PM the next day.
I currently have 19 hours of playtime logged on Factorio, and that was one session. I didn't take any breaks. I haven't even got into the game yet to record the footage. I'm filming this bit first.
Factorio is a game about automation. You mine some materials to build a mining machine, and then mine materials to fuel the mining machine, and then use the materials the machine mines to build a machine that mines the other stuff and feeds it into the other machines on its own, and then 15 hours later you've been using the oil you've been refining, using the electricity that you gain from building other stuff to start researching fuel and building a spaceship, and you've built a giant Rube Goldberg machine that, if you're smart, doesn't require any interaction by you. It scratches an itch that only games can scratch, and it does it incredibly well. A mod for Minecraft back in the day added mining machines a bit like this, and suddenly made Minecraft into a game that you could actually call fun and a game, and you could build and manage pipes for all the masses of materials you were digging up. I believe the developers worked on one such mod, I think. I love Factorio, and if I stop making videos, it's probably because I died in my chair playing it and forgot to eat. The only reason I haven't rated it higher is because it's not exactly got an emotionally fulfilling story, and it only really appeals to the childlike urge to build systems and watch them go. The game could be called repetitive, but I don't think it's a kind of repetition I could ever personally get bored with. I can't imagine what the game will be like when it's actually finished and out of early access, because I already think it's just It's so good at what it does right now. Maybe whenever there's eventually an official release, I'll dive back in and then never come out. It's gonna be so good, guys. I'm gonna die playing a video game. Number 5, Ladykiller in a Bind.
Okay, I'm gonna level with you. Ladykiller in a Bind is a visual novel which frequently depicts sections wherein the characters are having sex. But I would be hard-pressed to actually call it pornography.
It's deeply concerned with the ideas and voices and pretensions of its characters. So many lines are quotable and funny or feel like they have an actual point to make about how humans relate to one another. It's clear that a lot of time went into polishing the precise feel every scene has, every word and choice and piece of music fits perfectly, and the music even slides into a nice menu version when you go to save. The story can develop in quite a few different directions based on the myriad choices you can make about where to spend your time on the cruise ship trying to win an absurd popularity contest. Christine Love, the creator who also made Analog a Hate Story and Hate Plus, didn't just write some words and put some art next to them that occasionally depict sex. There's an appreciable precision to it. Love is very concerned with video game fashion, and it shows. Every character is styling, and also changes into equally styling new clothes every day. You know, like a person would actually do. I would be lying if I said I didn't have at least 2 outfits I wear in public that I stole directly from the main character's wardrobe. Incidentally, a recent patch added a work safe mode that adds delightfully garish Christmas sweaters to the sex scenes.
This is a coincidence?
It's really good, and I'd recommend it if you're into the idea of playing the most long-form and emotionally engaging pieces of what could technically be called erotica ever made. I've heard rumblings that it's even coming out on Steam, and Steam only slightly lets porn onto its platform, so you know it has to be some of the good stuff, right? Number 4, Video Ball. Video Ball is the new sport. It's asteroids meets Pong meets table tennis meets another world. Heck, it's such a specific mishmash that comparison doesn't really work because it feels so unique on its own. Everything is delineated easily so you understand what's happening without needing to have played it for dozens of hours yourself. I'm looking at you, all MOBAs. I love this game, but there's a downside to placing it so high on my list. I can't really recommend Video Ball because not many people play it. It's really hard to find a game and the netcode isn't too great, and since it didn't sell well, a lot of the patches to improve this stuff are probably never going to materialise, and that's a damn shame. It's a travesty that there aren't 100 people constantly playing it at all times to join in with. This was basically the only game I'd allowed myself to get hyped about for years. I even drove to Birmingham to see it before its release. It's as good as I'd hoped it to be, but I'm still disappointed because I rarely get to play it. Instead, I'll recommend whatever Tim Rogers makes next. I've decided that he deserves your money. But if you feel like giving it a shot, join the official Discord and arrange games through there with other players. I quite like the community aspect in that regard, but I don't like how it means everyone's better than me. It's not an e-sport, it's an A-sport, because it's so good. I told that joke to Tim Rogers, the creator, when he was at a convention showing the game off, and he tried to hide it, but he very obviously winced a little bit.
Number 3, Skyrim Remastered.
Number 3, Lisa. Lisa was a late 2014 release, but I only got around to it in early February this year because I'm a failed human. Luckily, failure's what Lisa's all about. You play a drug addict called Brad in a world where all the women spontaneously disappeared one day, so of course society completely collapsed and is now a wasteland where dirty magazines are currency. Brad attempts to secretly raise a baby girl he finds one day, but eventually everyone finds out and goes after her, and Brad undergoes a series of bad times and hallucinatory relivings of childhood trauma in order to save her. The game has a very cool but uncanny soundtrack that adds to a terrific sense of unease. Not just the feeling that the world sucks and things might not end well, but that your actions are directly making everything worse. At numerous points, Brad is presented with critical choices like which party members to subject to Russian roulette or whether or not to lose everything he has or one of his arms, and the consequences are real. Over the course of the game, you can unexpectedly lose friends, not even for story reasons, they can just get ganked by a dangerous world, and Brad can even end up losing both of his arms. The tone can be puzzling and take some time to get accustomed to, but it's worth it, and I had a really good time feeling bad and sad and like I was only hurting the people I loved by trying to be the hero. I intend to make a video exploring Lisa in more detail at some point in the future, but basically it's great. Number 2, Undertale. Everything about Undertale has already been said, including by me. I played it late because I tried to avoid hype, so for me it gets to be a 2016 game. It's really good, and you'd better have played it by now. Don't leave it like I did. At this point, it's been talked about so much that I'd rather just recommend it and assume you've either heard the reasons before or played it. Just do it. Please. Undertale only slightly beats out Lisa by having even better music and, more importantly, more electro swing remixes on YouTube. I wouldn't rate one higher than the other if I weren't forcing myself for the purposes of a dumb reductionist Game of the Year list. They're very, very different games despite both being RPGs, and I would recommend both. But I recommend Lisa more often because far less people seem to have heard of it. The downside to Undertale's massive popularity and reception by fans is it's probably immensely damaged Toby Fox's psyche and led him to believe he can never top it and make him maybe stop making games. Whereas Austin Jorgensen is actively and openly working on his next game, Ninja Tears, which I can't wait for, so that's pretty nice. Number 1, Bloodborne. Yes, that game I spent 90 minutes calling amazing over and over is my favourite game of this year. And it's my favourite game of this year because I only got a PS4 pretty recently. It's also the only game I own on the PS4, and I feel like it was worth the price of entry. I'm currently working through the DLC, dying to this guy in 5 seconds over and over and over. Expect a video about the DLC at some point in the future. Maybe. I'll have to see if I think I have anything worth saying about it, and if people are interested.
So there you have it, my favourite game of 2016, a game from 2015. Fuck! This isn't fair, this isn't right, it's not, the actual game of the year can't be a game from last year. That's really stupid. But luckily, this whole thing's fucking scripted. I have an actual game of the year from this year. Number 1, or I guess Bloodborne is kind of like one of the favourite things I did this year, so I guess the number 0 is Doom!
Oh my goodness, what a shock this turned out to be. They made another Doom, and it wasn't just average. It wasn't just another first-person shooter. It wasn't just a remake of the original's mechanics, or those of the underrated but not doomy Doom 3. And it wasn't just nicking mechanics from other modern shooters. Calling Doom the best first-person shooter implies it's even in the same category as those, and it's not. If anything, it's the first of something else entirely, not the last of the old, but the first of something new. Fights have a speed, a rhythm, a pace, an ebb and flow of health and ammunition that utterly destroys the mechanical design of early shooters and the regenerating health, take cover and wait a while nonsense of later stuff. The movement is slick, but just slow enough to feel deliberate, and the glory kills look and feel great. They're integrated well into the rest of the health system, the soundtrack pauses briefly, and it's just, and there are so many different ones for different angles and height differences, and they never feel anywhere near as bullshit and repetitive as they could have done. Cough cough, Deus Ex takedowns. There's even a beautiful philosophical approach reflected in the Doom Marine's actions, where he chooses to wordlessly ignore the information that Argent, Devil Doom, Evil Bad Energy can technically be used for good with only the occasional Nightmare Holocaust.
You must stop. The hell energy is unusable without the filters.
Because it's good to oppose something outright, even if it can supposedly have positive effects if you ignore how it's also causing the downfall of civilization. I hope there's a DLC that's just the Doom Marine standing in front of robot Steve Jobs and just kicking the shit out of the new iPhone, just repeatedly. Entire books have been written about the engine and level design of the first 2 Dooms, and entire books will, or at least should, be written about this one. A glorious new era of action games is waiting to be brought into existence, and many of the tools for building them are sitting right here. The one downside to New Doom is Bethesda saw its massive success as proof that it's a good idea to continue to have shitty business practices that promise to only hurt the games industry and reduce its chances of making those potential good games I just talked about.
Oh yeah, you voted for it on Twitter, and I didn't forget. I'm just lazy and fat and disgusting. Next time we're going to look into why Bethesda's policies promise to make it one of the worst game development companies ever, long into 2017 and doubtless all the rest of the years, and not for the regular reason of all the bad games that they keep making. Thanks for watching. I just ate 3 walnut whips. How's your Christmas going? I've got a whole bunch of plans for next year. I've got a whole bunch of bonus material I found on a hard drive that I thought was broken, but actually was just not plugged in properly. I want to finish the Dark Souls 2 apologetics video, which is going pretty well, but I thought I'd re-record loads of bits of it because otherwise it's just things I cut out of the Bloodborne video. I feel like it needs to be a bit more cohesive. I like to pace things properly. Oh, also, a Swedish bodybuilding Nazi tried to copyright claim one of my videos. So we might have to talk about that at some point too. See ya! I realise that I actually have to bring the camera in with me.